Welcome to Speaking Business Central. I am Ken Sabahar, and today we are going to be talking through the emotional cycle of change and the software implementation timeline. This is basically a blog post that I published on Speaking Business Central in November 2025. And what we're going to do is just basically walk through this and talk through it and have a little fun. A lot of the topics that I post about on Speaking Business Central are pretty heavy duty. Things like, general ledger entries and posting groups and the proper way to record WIP transactions on projects. Pretty hardcore stuff. Today, this is a little bit lighter topic. I certainly don't think it's a less important topic, but a little bit lighter, and have a little fun with this along the way, while also pointing out how important it is to understand the emotions that people go through as you go through an ERP implementation project. The main reason is knowing what to expect will ultimately allow you to deal with it better, more proactively, with a greater level of understanding of what you're experiencing and what you can expect going forward. So, why is understanding, what is the emotional cycle of change? Let's start there. So the emotional cycle of change, as is written here in the article, was actually something that was developed by two people, Don Kelly and Daryl Connor, in 1979. It was published as part of the 1979 Annual Handbook for Group Facilitators. I actually wasn't able to find a copy of this online, but there are quite a few websites out there. If you just do a search for this, you'll find a lot of details and commentary on this. For our purposes, what we really want to understand is that there are really 5 key emotional stages that individuals will typically go through as they implement change. This could be anything, right? Any type of change that people are going through, whether it's in your personal life or professional life. Certainly, an organization implementing a new ERP system is one of the most significant levels of change, I think, especially if you're an organization that manages inventory, projects or service, does manufacturing or assembly, and you have all of these processes that are fully integrated with each other, and you need to do financial reporting and communicate with third-party customers and vendors and maybe hook up to an e-commerce system, right? There are literally thousands of changes that have to be made over the course of an ERP implementation project. And so as you go through this, I feel like the emotional cycle of change is very relevant, and it's very important to communicate with the entire team. So what are these 5 stages? Well, the first stage is and these are the official stages according to the original publication. The first one is uninformed optimism. So you don't know much, but you're really excited. Number 2, informed pessimism. You start to learn more and you start to be less optimistic. Number 3, hopeful realism. You start to understand that what reality is, and you're optimistic about the future. Then 4, informed optimism. Right, you continue gaining optimism and feel positive about the change. And then 5 is completion. So what I did, and this goes way back when, over 20 years ago, I actually was working on a project, and one of the team members on the project actually kind of drew a visual of this, which we're going to look at right now. Drew basically this portion of it, basically the X and Y axis, and then this flat line showing like this is our current level, our baseline, if you will, our current level of performance. And the blue line represents the emotional cycle of change. So generally you're going to see it start at the same as the baseline, right? We're sitting here today. This is the starting point. Our current baseline is our current performance level, and then basically, let's talk through just an ERP implementation. Again, this could apply to a CRM implementation project, a BI implementation, e-commerce project. There's all kinds of technology related, system related projects that you might be undergoing. An ERP one is what we'll kind of talk about here. And so, there's this huge wave of optimism, which I've, by the way, you'll notice that I've relabeled the five classes up, or five stages up here, and then I also added a sixth one. So let's kind of talk through that. Now, what you'll see here on this chart here, and we're going to kind of stay here probably for the rest of the video here. What you'll see is that I not only have the emotional cycle of change with the blue line here demonstrating our performance level and an emotional state, if you will. But I also have on the bottom, this represents time as we're going forward over time. And then these boxes on the bottom represent the typical stages of an ERP implementation project. I understand that there are variations to these, but these are kind of like the broad categories, and some might be different depending on your implementation methodology that you're using. There may be some slight variances here, but this is a pretty common process. You might use different terms for some of these stages, but let's just kind of, before as we go through this, we'll kind of. And so what I did was I married together the emotional cycle of change and these phases of the ERP implementation project to kind of show you where you can expect to be at various points in the project. So we start off any ERP implementation project, right? The management team, executive team, whoever makes the decision that we are gonna implement a new ERP system here at this organization, and that's typically the software selection process, right? You're evaluating different ERP systems. You're starting here, and what happens is your emotional state. You begin to get these grandiose visions of how this is going to improve your life. And as you keep going through the software selection process, what you're doing is you're attending all these demonstrations, right? These various software publishers are showing you all these bells and whistles and glamour and glitz and boy, let me show you this. You're going to love this feature. Well, guess what? They're highlighting their very best, right? The sexiest features is what you're looking at. Whether or not you're actually going to utilize those features or whether or not they're even relevant for you, maybe even be beside the point. But they're demonstrating technology, advanced technology that you probably don't have today. You start to get very excited about that. And everyone does. There's no reason you shouldn't be, right? And then once you make a decision, we're going to go with System X. Of course, we want to go with Business Central, but we want to go with System X here for today. Now that you've made the decision to move forward, you go through typically some level of project planning, right? You're going to map out what's the scope of the project, which members of our organization are going to be part of this project team, and what are their roles going to be on this project. When do we want to go live? So those are some of the decisions that are being made here. And as you go through this, you're as you begin that project planning phase here, you see that you still have that buzz, right? You're buzzing. You're so excited about this new ERP system. Everyone's pumped. You're ready to go. But here's the thing. By the time we get to the end of the project planning phase, those expectations start to deteriorate. Why is that? Well, because during the project planning phase, it starts to dawn on everyone the amount of work and effort, the volume of decisions that are going to have to be made, the fact that these people are going to have to take on this project above and beyond their everyday roles and responsibilities at the organization. So, the luster starts to wear off a little bit here, and people start to realize this is going to be a lot of work. Okay. Now, we get into key user training. As we get into key user training, now this line here, which is called the moment of truth, could be really anywhere in the key user training phase. It depends on where you start with the key user training and when you hit certain topics. But ultimately, at some point during key user training, there is the moment of truth. What is the moment of truth? This is when it dawns on you that we're not going to get everything that we originally envisioned out of this system. It could be for various reasons. It could be that certain features kind of were overblown during the software selection process, and they don't really do what you thought they did. It could be that certain things aren't relevant for you. It could be that the way that your business runs, your workflows and processes don't enable you to take advantage of certain features. Or it could just be that there's too much work involved. You know what? We can do shop floor scheduling for you, but you're going to have to define an 8, 10, 12-step routing when today you only have a one-step routing with a rough estimate of time on it. Right? That's not going to help you very much, and no one at the organization wants to go through and build out all those detailed production routings. So maybe we're not going to get all of that value that we thought of out of this system. So obviously here we're on the downslope, right? Our emotional state is decreasing, and it continues decreasing after key user training is completed. We're let by the time we finish key user training here, right at about this point, we're actually our expected future performance is below our current performance. We're thinking this system isn't going to help us at all. That's pretty common. You get that. Like, why did we make this decision? What are we doing here? As once key user training is completed, as you go through the training on the system and the general workflows, what you're doing is you're typically recording gaps. You're identifying maybe places in the system where the system doesn't meet your exact requirements. And we're going to have to do some customizations, modifications, or development in the system in order to meet your needs. This may be adding some new fields, building some new reports or documents, whatever that case may be, to kind of plug those gaps between what the system does out of the box and what your organization needs it to do. Right? Now, that phase typically lasts, it takes maybe a couple months to get through that development phase, right? To design all of those customizations, to develop them, to test them and get them approved by the key user team. That takes time. And during that time, people are seeing that there's a lot of work involved, right? People have been allocating a lot of time to key user training and testing the system as this custom development's getting done. And you're not really seeing any light at the end of the tunnel yet. As a matter of fact, you continue going down, and when you reach the towards the very end of the development phase, you reach what I call the trough of despair, right? The trough of despair. This is a low place. You're emotionally spent. You wish you never even started this implementation project. You don't see any value out of it, or little value for the effort that you've put into it so far. And you can't maybe even envision how you're going to get to a higher level of performance in this new system than you have been in the old system. Now, the good news is we begin to enter what we call the pilot testing phase, or the system testing phase. Now that we've trained all the users on the system, we've done some development to plug those gaps, we're now going to start walking through our workflows in the new system. We're going to start to see real examples of our transactions for our business running through the system. And if we've done a good job of training the users and planning out the project and completing that development, those processes should be able to be completed, at least the core. Maybe there's some I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed. But you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's right here where we start to see this uptick in our performance expectations. Things start to improve. We start to see users sitting down in the conference room, entering transactions in the system. They're learning it. They're using the system. They're becoming more comfortable with how it works. You're seeing that transactions are being entered and processed and posted, and the financial results are available for the accounting team. You start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still things that need to be done. But as we start that testing phase, things start to improve. By the time we get into end user training, we should be back to the baseline. Right? Now we're going to introduce end users. So you'll notice over here we had key users, and now we have end user training. End users are really those users who weren't really involved with any decision making on how the system was going to be set up, how it was going to be used, which options and which features were going to get deployed. Basically, the end users are the ones where we're saying, hey, we've got some training videos and training documents and workflows and standard operating procedures created for you. And here is how you're going to use the system. Now you start to see users getting excited. They're seeing that they can process their transaction through the system. They're starting to point out features and functionality that's better in the new system than it was in the legacy system. And now this starts to generate even more buzz, and where we get to what we call gathering momentum. So by the end of the key user training phase, users are excited. We've got a whole pool of users who are excited about the system, and that finish line is in sight, right? You can tell we're going to start ramping up for deployment. We're going to start planning how are we going to cut over our data from the current system to the new system. Users are in the system in the sandbox environment, continuing to learn, continuing to train, continuing to ask questions, and dot some of those I's and cross some of those T's that maybe the key users didn't even know about or realize were needed. So there's still development going on here. During deployment, you'll start to see that that line flattens out. The reason it flattens out here is because there's a lot of work going on. Really, right? People are seeing, what, we've got to cut over our data. We've got a plan. We're going to be working extra hours. This might take a weekend where we're going to have to do a physical inventory count to make sure we start with clean inventory. We may have to do one-time processes for purchase orders and receiving or shipping to coordinate the data cutover from the new system. So there's a lot going on. By the time we go live, we finish the go live phase here at the end of deployment. And what you'll notice, pretty clear, the new line, the performance expectations line, is now clearly way above the original baseline or the current baseline that we started at, right? People are more productive. They're using the system. They're more optimistic. They're about the future and the future performance that the organization is going to be able to get out of the system. And then the last phase that I added here is called the new normal. So the new normal represents, in the case of Business Central implementations, the deployment of a SaaS cloud-based ERP solution that's going to continue to be updated on a monthly basis, where new features and new functionality and new technology is going to be applied on a regular basis. Users are going to continue to gain experience and comfort level in the new system. Additional modules or additional features will continuously be improved. Maybe integrations with other systems will come. The new normal, when we hit operations, does not mean that we're done. We do want to formally recognize the conclusion of the implementation project, but that doesn't mean that the cycle of change is ended. I like to think that it will continue at this current slow upward trajectory indefinitely into the future. The graph shows it here, and you'll notice it is not, once we hit reality in this new normal, you'll notice this isn't coincidental. The new normal is lower than those original unrealistic expectations that we had back when we were in software selection and project planning. But that doesn't mean that out into the future, at some point over here, out here, maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, it doesn't mean that we cannot attain levels that were as high or even higher than those original unrealistic expectations. But just know that when you get deployed and you're up and running for that first year, that new normal isn't going to meet those unrealistic expectations that you had at the early onset. But that doesn't mean that you can't continue to strive. Stay engaged with the new system, stay current on new features and functionality, and take advantage of everything that your new system has to offer. Hope you had fun. Please use this. Share this with your entire project team. Don't hold this. Don't keep this to yourself. The more people who have an understanding of this, everyone who's involved in the project should really be exposed to this, in my opinion, just so they can have a better feel for what they can expect to feel as they make their way through a complex ERP implementation project. Thank you very much.